What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey and this is my channel, and today I'm going to be walking you through the process step by step on how to file an appeal or a letter of reconsideration to the SBA for the EIDL program. I'm going to be talking about what you need to keep in mind, and I will also be providing a template letter of reconsideration that you can use in your own appeals process. Now, if you're somebody who is denied the EIDL loan or you simply want to request more funds through the EIDL program, then this video is for you. So let's get started. So let's first talk on a few of the examples of when you can and cannot file for a letter of reconsideration or an appeal. So the first one is that if you are somebody who received $150,000 or more, you will not be able to file a letter of reconsideration for more funds. The reason is because the EIDL cap is set at $150,000. So if you received $150,000 or more, you've already reached that ceiling and there's no more funds to be allocated to you. So unfortunately, if you are one of those people that got $150,000, then there really isn't anything else that you can do. You just simply have to make your EIDL funds last as long as they can, and there really isn't any room for a letter of reconsideration. Now, this could potentially change in the future if the SBA increases the cap, but I don't know if that's likely or if that will happen. So my suggestion would be that if you're somebody who got $150,000 to simply not count on getting any more funds. But now begs the question of who can file an appeal and on what basis do you have a kind of ground to stand on for an appeals process. And if you're somebody who was denied on the basis of credit, if you're denied because your business was not affected negatively enough to justify an EIDL loan, if you're somebody who was denied because your banking information was incorrect, or if you're somebody who did not receive a cash advance or you want to request more EIDL funds, these are all legit reasons why you could go about filing a letter of reconsideration or an appeal. So the first thing that you need to do when filing an appeal is you need to have a real understanding of why you were denied. So if you were denied the loan, then you need to make sure that you have received that denial letter and you have a clear understanding as to the reasons behind your denial. The reason why this is important is because the reasons why you were denied will dictate how you structure your appeal and your letter of reconsideration. So this is super important because if you can't have a clear understanding of why you are either requesting approval or requesting more funds, then how can you expect for the SBA to be able to understand and approve that request? And the answer is that if you don't understand it, the SBA won't understand it and they will simply deny it. The next thing that's important to keep in mind is that when laying out the information in an appeal, you want to keep the information really easy to read, really simple and straight to the point. When doing something like an appeal or really anything like this, where there's going to be a generic sales rep going over your information and making a decision off of that proposal alone, you want to make the process as easy and really effortless as possible. You don't want to have to make the SBA representative work for you in order for your appeal to be approved. You want to do all the legwork on your end, and you want them to just be able to open your appeal, understand why you need the appeal, and be able to approve the appeal really easily and kind of thoughtlessly. Because if the SBA representative has to work, if they have to really try to understand and make an effort to understand why you either need an approval or need more funds, they just simply won't waste their time and they'll move on to the next letter of reconsideration. So let's first go over the letter of reconsideration. So the letter of reconsideration is the physical letter that you will actually include in your appeals packet. If you're going to be emailing the appeals, and you of course just want it to be the first page of the PDF, if it's something you're physically mailing through like the actual mail service, then you'll want it to be the first page in your packet that you create. But you want this to be the first thing that the SBA representative sees. Think of it kind of like a cover letter. So for the letter of reconsideration, you want to include a few different things. You want to make sure to include who you are and what your application number was. You want to include why you are requesting either an appeal or a letter of reconsideration, on what basis, whether that be to request more funds or to appeal a denial. You want to give a background information on why you were denied in the first place, and then you'll also want to give reasoning as to why you should be reconsidered and why you should be approved into the EIDL program. This should all be briefly explained in an easy to read way in the letter of reconsideration itself. I have typed up a kind of template letter of reconsideration for you guys, and so let's take a look at that right now. I will include this letter of reconsideration template in the description below, but the thing that's important to note is that the red text will not show up in the description below, as you can't change colors in YouTube descriptions. But the red text indicates things that you are going to need to erase and then change to reflect your specific details. The black text is just the generic kind of template that you can use that you can include in your own letter. So it starts off by saying app number XXX. So you'll want to say app number and then follow in your application number here. And then Dear Reconsideration Department, I am writing requesting reconsideration of the denial of the SBA EIDL loan application number XXX. It appears I was denied due to, insert denial reason here. So this is where you would say I was denied due to credit history. I was denied due to my financials weren't affected because of COVID. I was denied because of bad banking information. Whatever the case is, you will want to give your reason for your denial there. And then you'll say, I'm requesting a letter of reconsideration due to, and you'll say insert why you need to be considered here. And I gave a couple examples of this. So one example could be, my credit score has improved from X to X, and I now qualify for the loan per the credit requirement in the EIDL program. Please re-pull my credit and you will see the improvement in the credit report. The next example could be, though the SBA determined that my business was not negatively affected by COVID-19 pandemic, I've attached bank statements, profit and loss statements, and balance sheets proving otherwise. I appreciate you taking the time to reconsider my application. I hope my explanation clears things up so I can get an approval and be able to save my business. If you have any questions, please let me know and I can assist you in this process any way I can. Sincerely, your name. I would also suggest including your contact information as well. So this is the kind of first page of your appeal. You want to include this letter of reconsideration like you guys just saw. It's super simple, super straight to the point. If you're somebody who is submitting a reconsideration based off of needing more funds, so you were approved, you were funded, but you need more money, then your letter of reconsideration will look slightly different. For example, instead of saying, I am requesting reconsideration of the denial of the SBA EIDL loan application, you could say something along the lines of, I am requesting more funds through the EIDL program. And instead of saying, it appears I was denied due to blank, you could say, though I was funded X amount of dollars, I am requesting more funds because, and then you can provide your reasoning as to why you need more funds. And so the general kind of skeleton of the letter is the same, but your reasonings are going to be different. So like I said, this is in the description below, so you'll simply need to copy and paste it, and then you will need to change your information to reflect your specific information. So once you have your letter of reconsideration written out and constructed, that part of this process is done. You will then just need to set this aside and be able to use it as the cover for your appeals package. The second step of this process is to gather evidence, because at the end of the day, you want to have evidence to support the reasoning as to why you need more funds or why you should be approved to the EIDL program. And your evidence is going to be different depending on why you were denied. For example, if you were denied for credit history, then your evidence would be maybe, for example, if you are somebody who had decent or good credit before COVID-19 and as a result of COVID-19, your credit history suffered, good evidence for you would be pulling up historical credit card data. So pull up past credit reports and past credit histories and show that, hey, before COVID-19, I paid my bills on time. I paid my credit card on time. I never carried a balance. I had a good credit score. And because of COVID-19 and because of the lack of payment with the SBA EIDL program, my credit score suffered. And you should provide evidence that you are not a poor credit borrower, but you are kind of a victim of circumstance, and that because of that, they should approve you on the basis of your past credit scores, not necessarily your current credit scores. And with this, you would want to give a written explanation of why your credit score was poor. You'd want to make sure to provide screenshots of your credit history. You'd want to provide any emails or communications you have with credit card companies or debt collectors, things like that. On that same note, if you're somebody who had a poor credit score because you do have some debt, I would encourage you to try to pay off as much debt as you can, provide evidence of paying that debt off, and then include that in your appeal. Another example would be if you're somebody who was denied on the basis of not having been negatively affected enough by COVID-19 to justify EIDL funding. And if I was denied on this basis, and if I was filing an appeal for myself, what I would do is I would first gather my profit and loss statements. And for those of you who don't know, a profit and loss statement is just a statement showing how much money you have coming in in where that money is coming from and where that money is going and what your expenses are. And then during profit and loss statements, it also gives a rundown on how much money you have at the end of the month, whether it be a profit or a loss. And a profit and loss statement does not have to be an overly complicated thing. It can be a simple document that you create in Excel, and it can be something that is super intricate, super detailed, and super professional like this. Or it can be something as simple as this, which is just a simple document that's created in Excel on your own. It doesn't have to be professionally put together by a CPA, but something just showing where your profit is and where your losses are, and being able to prove that, hey, I am being negatively affected by COVID. Just look at my historical data. And April, May, and June of 2019, I made X amount of dollars. And the same period in 2018, I made X amount of dollars. In 17, I made X amount of dollars. And then look at 2020. I am 50% less than what I was doing in previous years. And so a P&L statement should be able to show the historical data of the business and how 2020 compares to the historical data. Now, the one thing that is important to note with this is that if you're somebody that does not show a significant decrease in your P&Ls from 2020 to past years, then you're not going to be approved. In order to justify filing an appeal on this basis, you have to have justification behind it. So you can't just send in your P&L and show that in 2020 you're up 20% and expect to be approved. Like, you have to show a loss, you have to show a justification for the funds, and the way to do that is showing a historical loss in 2020 compared to the past years. And then if you're somebody who is wanting to file an appeal because you're requesting more funds, then you would want to include the same types of documents. You would want to include where you spent the first round of EIDL funding, where that money went, and why you ran out. You would want to include why you need more money, and so P&L statements would be an effective way to do that as well. And I think even more importantly than the other two appeals, including bank statements and a letter of reconsideration for more funds is even more important, because it will give a detailed overview of where your money is going and what you are spending your money on, because the SBA will undoubtedly want to know that if they are giving you a second round of funding. Remember that it is your job to prove why you need more funds or why you need an approval into the EIDL program. And so my kind of advice to everybody is the more data you provide, the better. The better of an argument you provide, the quicker you'll be approved. So things like bank statements, P&Ls, balance sheets, any communications you have with debt collectors or credit card companies, these are all things that are going to be extremely helpful in your appeals process. And if you don't know how to construct a P&L or balance sheet on your own, I will include a link to some good templates to those so that you can simply just download them or work off of those that are found online. These are not my personal templates, they're not ones that I created, but they are ones that I have kind of used in the past to help myself and my own businesses create P&Ls. The other thing that I want to add is don't overcomplicate this process either, is that if you don't need to include bank statements, then don't include it. Only include what you need to include. Because again, you want the SBA representative to open this appeals package to see why you're requesting an appeal and on what basis you're requesting it in. You want them to be able to flip the page and then see the evidence for this argument. And then you want them to be able to make a conclusion based off of that. You don't want them to have to flip through unnecessary documentation. You don't need to give them your life story. You don't need to give them a biography of your business and how it ended up where it is today. A letter of reconsideration, the proof as to why you should be reconsidered, and that's it. That's all you need to include. So then the next few steps are, once you have gathered your information, you've gathered your evidence, and you've constructed your letter of reconsideration, you're going to want to construct it into one PDF packet that can be sent off via email. Now, it's important to create this in a PDF. You don't want it to be in a Word document because you don't want it to be hard to read. You don't want them to have to open Word in order to read it. Turn it into a PDF. And make sure that before you turn it into a PDF that all the pages are in the right order. Make sure to proofread it. Make sure that it's easy to understand. And then save it as a PDF. And then once you have saved it as a PDF file, then make sure to rename the file something appropriate. I would recommend naming it Reconsideration App blah, 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 and then your application number, or just application number blah, blah, blah. Then once you have named the file, then open up email and attach the file to your email, and you're going to want to send it to this email address right here. I will also have this email in the description below as well, so you can just copy and paste it, but this is the email address that is handling all appeals. Lastly, in the subject line, you're going to want to put letter of reconsideration for application number and then your application number. So make sure to make that the subject line. You can do it in all caps, you can do it in just regular text, whatever the case is, but you want to make sure that in the subject line, you acknowledge the fact that it is 1, a letter of reconsideration, and 2, they know what application number it is for. And then once you have the subject line filled out, for the body of the text, I would just copy and paste the same letter of reconsideration in the body of your email. So you're going to have that letter of reconsideration in both the kind of cover photo of your appeals packet as well as the body of the text for the email itself. Once you have that there, make sure that you include your contact information so that an SBA rep can reach you either via phone or email and that you're easy to get a hold of. And then once all that is there, you hit send and you are good to go. Remember when filing an appeal that you don't have to overcomplicate it. The SBA and the government knows that this is kind of a tough time for everybody and not everybody's a professional accountant. And so it doesn't have to be this extremely professional and extremely well put together packet. All it has to be is easy to read, easy to understand, and have all the required information easily presented. But at the end of the day, it's important to also remember that in some cases you will still be denied because a letter of reconsideration in a really well put together appeals packet is not going to change your financials. And if you don't have the financials to support an appeal, and if you don't have the financials to support requesting more funds, then no matter how well put together your packet is, it's not going to change that reality. And so it is important to remember that as well, is that in some cases you are just going to be denied. You're just not going to be able to get more funds, and there's really very little that you're going to be able to do to change that. And so with that being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you some valuable insight into the appeals process. This process isn't complicated, but I have gotten a lot of questions over it over the last few weeks, which is why I wanted to do this video. Now remember, the email of where you need to send this letter of reconsideration is in the description below, as is this template that I've gone over today. And make sure that if you file an appeal and you have success with it, or even if you don't have success with it, I would love if you could leave a comment down below, and I would love to hear about your appeals process and what you did and how that ended up working out for you. And while you're at it, make sure to also hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.